The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the second webinar. This is Krishnendu Roy. I am logged in using Serena's account, so see you might see in the system as her being logged in, but it's actually me, Krishnendu. So I think we have only a few attendees logged in right now. So those of you who are on call, can you please, by typing, either by unmuting yourself and talking or by typing in the question box, let me know that you can hear me and see my screen. And we're also going to wait for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes to see if there are any more people who are joining in the next few minutes. So I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes and then we will get started. In the meantime, please confirm that you can hear my screen and see my screen and hear me. Thank you, Evelyn. All right, so just let's wait for a couple of more minutes and then we'll get started. Those of you who are just joining, this is Krishnendu. I'm logged in using Serena's account, and we are going to start in a couple of minutes. I'm just waiting to see if anyone else is joining or not. All right, let's get started. So welcome to the second webinar of this school year. So before we talk about any of the topics that I plan on talking about today, I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes and let you all ask any questions that you have as a follow-up to our first webinar or any other general question related to App Inventor. And I am going to unmute you all in case you want to ask the question if you have a microphone. So you can either ask the question just by speaking or you can type in the question box as well. So I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes to see if I have any questions or not. If not, we are going to talk about some more apps in App Inventor. I don't see any questions, so I'm assuming you guys are good so far. So let's get started. So we will continue our exploration of the foundational ideas of App Inventor and creating apps using App Inventor. So last time when we met, we discussed creating a starter app. We followed a tutorial, the first tutorial where when we pressed the screen, it buzzed. So I am in my screen. On my screen, you right now see the App Inventor landing page. And again, I usually just search for MIT App Inventor to get to this page. So appinventor.mit.edu is the main landing page for App Inventor. I don't remember and type that in. I just search for App Inventor. That brings me here. So when we are creating apps, we click on this Create App orange button up top. Now, the Educator tab, which is there kind of in the middle in the top bar, that has some tutorials which I think are really useful for teachers who are starting out, for students to learn the basics of App Inventor first. So within that, there are several tiles up top, and we're still in this beginner's tutorial tile. And there are several beginner's tutorials. We looked at the Hello Cody tutorial before. I'm going to talk about the Talk to Me tutorial today. So what this is going to do is it's going to create an app where, just like before, we are going to have a button first, and when we click on the button, the app is gonna say something out loud. So all these tutorials, they have video tutorials, they have the sidebar tutorials, they have the PDFs. I really like the PDFs of the video tutorials, but I'm not going to go through each step of the video tutorials. No, I'm not going to do that. I think our time will be better spent if I do it, show you how I'm doing it, verbalize what I'm doing, and share the ideas and realizations that I have when I'm creating this app. And then let you all ask questions, and you can review the tutorials later on. So again, we are going to go to the App Inventor main page. We are going to go to Educators tab, click on Tutorials, click on Beginners Tutorial. Then we are going to discuss this Talk to Me, both part 1 and part 2 tutorial. So let's go ahead. I'm going to create an app. So I'm going to hit the Create App button, then click on the Start New Project. So as you can see, I have a lot of projects that are already built that I have worked on before. So it all automatically opens the previously worked project for me. So I'm going to create a new project. So I'm going to say Start New Project. I'm going to name it NAF 2021 Talk to Me. A lot of the times in computer science, when you have multiple words, the common convention is to club all those words together and initialize the first alphabet of every word. This convention is called camel casing. Why camel casing? Because you have kind of like a hump every time the second and successive word, since the first alphabet is capitalized, that creates kind of a hump. So that's called camel casing. So I'm going to do that. We have a blank app, and just to review some of the things that we talked about last time, we have the user interface column at the very left. In the middle, we have the viewer where you see the visual elements of the app. Then you have the component tree and all the GUI components that you're going to add to your app, be it user interface, be it layout, be it media, be it some social component, whatever you add, that shows up in this component tree. And then when you add something for that individual component, when you click on that component, you get to see all the properties of that. This is the designer screen. This is one of the two screens. So we build the app, the visual elements in the designer screen, add all the components and set all the properties of all those components. And then we have the blocks editor screen. And we build the behavior of the app here. So I see a couple of teachers who are joining a little late, so I'm going to quickly go back a little bit. So what we are doing today is we are going to App Inventor, going to this Educator tab, clicking on this tutorial, clicking on the beginner tutorials, and then we are talking about this Talk to Me Part 1 and Part 2. So we just created an empty app. I just named it NAF 2021 Talk to Me. So that's all we have done so far. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a button component from the user interface drawer. So when I drag it and let it go, it gets added to the top left corner of my screen. And notice the button is now showing up in my component tree. It's indented a little bit compared to the screen, and that shows that the button belongs to the screen. So the screen is the parent component, the button is the child component. So we can change, so now button is selected, and that's why we have this green background for the button component. And when it is selected, we can change different properties. So a button has a lot of properties. So I can go ahead and change the width property and make it fill parent. So screen is fill parent, screen is parent. So when I make the buttons height property fill parent, it spans the width of the screen. We can change the text property of the button, and we can say something like, talk to me. And we can even change the height property. We can say it is certain pixels. So usually you don't want to, when you say 100 pixel, 200 pixels, something like that. So if I say 100 pixel, that's that much, roughly an inch. But usually you don't want to put a fixed value like that because your app might be running in all sorts of devices. So a better option might be to say, okay, 25% instead of 100 pixels. 25% means the height will span the quarter, the top quarter of the screen. So I see some of the, I'll see some other teachers just joined. No, I think we are good. All right. So we are doing the beginner's tutorial, the talk to me one. I just added a button, changed a few properties. The next thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to media and then add this text to speech component. Now notice it has only a few properties. Right now I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to keep it like that. So my goal is to, when we click on the button, we want to say something. So the visual aspect of that, this is it for now. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go to blocks editor, and this is where we create the behavior of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag some items. So I'm going to click on the button. Since I want my app to respond to clicking the button, this is my event handler. I'm going to drive that. I'm going to hit text to speech. So the lavenderish color blocks, these are actions. So these are what you want your app to do when the button click happens. So I'm going to drag that. And then I have a message block here. So I'm going to go to this text and drag this empty message. So what I want you to now do for maybe the next 2 minutes is think about how we can snap these things together to form our behavior of that. And you can, if you want, you can share your thoughts in the question box. So I'm going to stop for 2 minutes. I'll let you think. Our goal is to make the app be responsive so that when the user clicks on the button, the app says something. So I'm going to let you all think about it and give me some feedback. So I'm going to stop. I'll let you all think and discuss and let me know what you think. So I'm going to stop for 2 minutes. Feel free to ask questions as well, okay? Those of you who are joining late, this is Krishnendu. I'm logged in using Serena's account, and we are doing the Talk to Me app. Later on, you should go to the App Inventor main site. You should click into Educators Tutorial, Beginners Tutorial, and this is a very exhaustive, detailed tutorial, these two. I'm just doing the steps and verbalizing it without actually going through the details of the tutorial, so that I'm assuming you can do that on your own time. So what we did was we created a NAF 2021 Talk to Me app. It's a blank app. I added a button. I changed some properties. I changed the height property to 25%, meaning the button is going to span the top quarter of my screen. I changed the width property to fill parent. And I changed the text property to talk to me to make the button look like this. I also dragged the text to speech. That's all I have done in the designer. Now we're in blocks editor and I've dragged a few blocks and I've requested you all to think about how you can combine them together to make the app speak. So anyone has any ideas? So you all can unmute yourself if you want to speak, or you can write something in the chat box or the tech question box.
So you would have to connect the call text speech message into when button clicked,
Yeah.
and then whatever you want to say, you would click that text box, and then you can type in whatever you want the app to say, and then when it's initiated, button would be clicked, text to speech would speak exactly what you're writing.
Great answer. So that's what I did. I snapped this text to speech dot speak block to my button dot click, and then I dragged the text block and placed that here. So let's now try this out. So I'm gonna first, I have connected my phone using a USB cable to my computer. I have this special app on my computer called Visor that lets me cast my phone onto my computer screen. So I'm gonna open up the Visor app and I'm gonna connect my phone now using the USB cable, and it shows up in the Visor app, and I'm going to open the Visor app here. So now I have the MIT App Inventor to Companion app installed on my phone. I'm going to bring that up. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Connect AI Companion. That's going to show me a QR code. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan that QR code from my companion app on my phone. There we go. So it's going to probably take a couple of seconds and then it's going to show up there. So you see the app, I'm holding my phone, and that's whatever I see on my phone screen is also being casted on my computer screen. So this is what we see. So let me click on the Talk to Me button and see what happens. So You probably didn't hear anything because my volume was turned all the way down. So let me try it again.
Hello there, NAF teacher.
So it's saying, hello there, NAF teacher, because it doesn't read NAF as NAF. But that's okay.
Hello there, NAF teacher.
Let me now change this. So I changed something. I did not do anything else. The app was already pulled on onto my phone. Now, let's try it out.
Hello there, teachers. Hope you are having a good night.
So notice this testing mode is live. So when we make any changes, it automatically gets propagated to the companion app if it is already running. So that's the first version of this app. We had a button, we made it talk. Now, I'm going to wait for a minute. I'll let you all ask questions before adding on to it. So next couple of minutes, think about what we did. Ask questions, please. And again, there is no dumb question. Ask any questions that you want to ask. Having questions is good. I'm sure you tell that to your students. So please ask any questions that you want. I'm expecting questions. All right, so let's now add something to this. So far, we have just had a button and our app is responding to the button click. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to go back to the designer and make the app respond to shaking of the phone as well. So our phones, the current smartphones, have a lot of sensors. It, of course, has a GPS sensor, the location sensor, which senses your GPS coordinates. It has an accelerometer sensor, which senses kind of like a compass. It senses your pitch, roll. It can also sense shaking of a phone. You have your sound sensors and microphones. You have a light sensor. Your phone can dim itself if it's in a dark room. It can go to max brightness if it's in sunlight. So things like that. So there are lots of sensors available that we can use. Now, know that not all these sensors might be available in your phone, but these sensors might be available in other Android devices. So for example, and again, when we look at any palette component, if we are not sure what that does, we can click on this question mark that shows a basic description of what it does. So for example, the barometer, if your phone, not most phones wouldn't have a barometer, but if it did, it'll be able to measure the ambient pressure. And if you want to know what kind of event handlers are there, what kind of actions are there, you can click on the more info and it's going to say that the properties associated with that sensor are air pressure, whether it's available or not. So in a phone which doesn't have a barometer, that property will be false. It's going to say that barometer is not there. And it can This is an event handler that you can add to your app if your device had a barometer where it can trigger whenever there is a change in atmospheric pressure. So coming back, this is the sensor we are interested in. This is the one that can detect shaking. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And now what we want to do is not only do we want to talk when we click on the button, but we want to say something when we shake the phone as well. So now I'm going to go back, now that I added the accelerometer sensor, I'm going to go back to my blocks and see what kind of events are there related to this sensor. So as we can see, as you can probably guess, the accelerometer one, the shaking, is the event we want to use. And then we can again reuse a text-to-speech.speak and say something when we start shaking. So let me open up my phone again. So now I'm going to again click on the Talk to Me button on my phone.
Hello there, teachers. Hope you are having a good night.
Now, and you will not be able to see it, but now I'm going to shake my phone.
Stop shaking me. That is not funny. Stop shaking me. That is not funny.
So as you can see, when I shake it multiple times, each time it triggers the text-to-speech.speak and it starts speaking, but then the next shake restarts that speaking.
Stop shaking me. That is not funny.
So that was another nice addition. So I'm going to again wait for a minute or two and let you all ask questions. The next addition that we want to build is have a way for us to type something and then the app stays it back to us. So for us to do that, all these ideas that we have explored so far, we're going to add on to that a little bit. So I'm going to go to user interface and look for something where we can type something. And if you try to guess, you'll probably guess it right, which is this text box is what we want for writing something in. So when we add a text box, I'll of course want to again make it look consistent. So I'm going to make the width fill parent. I'm going to height maybe 10%. And then I'm going to add another button. I'm going to make the height and the width fill parent and maybe 10% again. And I'm going to change the text property to say speak what was typed. So the expectation is for the user to first type something in the text box and then when they hit the speak what was typed button to say that out. So now we again go to blocks editor. We need to think about it again. So when will our text to speech say something? Whenever the button press happens. So that's the second button. So I'm going to go to button. I'm going to again look for an event handler, the one that I want. So I'm going to drag button.click. So when button.click happens, we want text to speech to do something. So that's again the text to speech.speak block. Now what we want to do is the interesting part now. We want to get the actual text from that text box. So we will have to go to the text box, and many of the blocks will have these pairs corresponding to all the properties. So let me go back a little bit again. I'm going to click on this text box, so that selects that text box on this component tree. Notice it has several properties: background color, enabled, font size, height, width, hint. So all those texts, so all those are properties, all those are different properties that it has. And if I go to blocks editor, if I look at text box, you'll see that for each of those properties, I have a couple of blocks. So these are called the setter block. So the second one is the setter block. The first one is the getter block. So this block gives the app the current color of that text box background. This lets you change the property when the app is running in the code. It lets you change the property from the code blocks. Similarly, this is the getter block for height property. So this will give me in pixels how high the component of text box right now is. If I want to change it, this is the setter block for height. So we actually want to get the text from that. So this is the text getter block. So I'm going to grab that and plug that in. Now I'm going to again try out our app. So as you can see, by default shows us a hint. So I'm going to touch in that text box that automatically, the way Android is automatically built, that whenever a text box is active, the keyboard shows up. So I'm going to now type something. I'm actually going to swipe my finger because of my keyboard I can swipe. So I wrote, this is a test message. Now I'm about to speak. I'm about to hit the button which says speak what was typed.
This is a test message.
So I added a few more words. I'm going to again hit the button.
This is a test message and it is working.
Let's hit the top button and see if that still continues to work or not.
Hello there, teachers. Hope you are having a good night.
Let's shake.
Stop shaking me. That is not funny. This is a test message and it is working.
So now we are building more interactivity in this app. So we now have a text box. And in this text box, when I type something, then when I hit the button, it reads that typed message from the text box and it says it out loud. We can do more things. For example, after it has verbalized this message, I can clear out the text box. So the way I do that is I go to text box, and again, instead of the getter for the text, I drag the setter for the text and set it to an empty text, which will clear it up. So now I'm going to go back. This still shows the previous message. Now I'm going to hit the speak what was typed button and notice what happens.
This is a test message and it is working.
Notice as soon as I hit that button, it spoke what it was supposed to speak, but then it erased the thing that I had typed before. So let me type something else.
I had a nice dinner tonight.
So now it's more interactive. So it's reading what was written, verbalizing it, removing the text. So I'm going to again stop. So this is basically what was the tutorial, both part 1 and part 2. So I'm going to again stop, let you all ask questions. Also, give me some more suggestions on what we can add to this, what features can we add. So let me see what you all are thinking. So ask questions, give me some feedback, give me possible extensions. You can either type on the question box or you can unmute yourself and speak. So a question is, what type of cable are you using? A regular USB cable connected to your computer? Absolutely. So it's just a regular USB cable. One side is USB-C because my phone is the Google Pixel phone, which has USB-C. So one side is USB-C. The other side is just regular USB. Once I connected it, the first time I connected it, there was a message saying, do you trust this device on my phone? And I said, yes. And then I have this app that I actually paid for. This is not a free app. I think I paid like $20 or something, but it's worth it for me because I do webinars like this. So this app is called Visor. There might be other apps like this. This app works both for Mac and Windows. I'm right now on a Windows machine. So this can cast the screen of my phone onto my computer. So this is really useful for like webinars, or if I'm teaching a class where I want to cast my phone onto the projector, this is really useful. That was a good question. Evelyn had asked that question. All right, so give me more feedback. Well, what do you think of this app so far? How can we build onto this? What can we add? One of the things that I have seen some students work on is, instead of just saying it loud, it also translates it. So for example, let me try to do that. So we use the text to speech to verbalize this, but it was in English. Let's say we want to type something and then we want to say it out in English, followed by followed by translating it to Spanish. This is for someone who is maybe a new language learner and help them out to translate. So there's this media block called Yandex Translate. This is kind of like a service, meaning you send out your text that you want to translate to this Yandex Translate server. It translates it. It sends you back a text, which is the translation. So I'm going to now add this, and then what we are going to do is, instead of deleting this text box, I'm going to right click. I'm going to disable that block for now. So you can do that. You can right click a block and do a bunch of things. You can disable. If your block stack becomes too tall, you can collapse it, all those kinds of things. You can create a picture of all your blocks to download and share with others. So what we are going to do is we're now going to look at Yandex Translate. And again, we want to request a translation. So we're going to call this request translation block. We're going to plug in. So what I did was I clicked on this block and then pressed Control C for copy, Control V for paste. So you can copy paste a block, or you can right click and duplicate a block. So whatever we typed in, I'm going to request a translation for that. And then, sorry, that needs to go in the next slot because this is the text to translate socket. And language to translate is, so let me now look into Yandex Translate a little bit. So I'm going to go back to Designer. I'm going to click on this question mark, click on the got like more information, and it gives me, so this is the app inventor documentation. It gives me more information about this block. So this block is saying, by providing a target language to transmit to, for example, ES for Spanish, or EN for English, or RE for Russian, and a word or sentence to translate, this will request translation to Yandex, which is an online service. Once the text is translated by the service, the event got translation will be executed. Meaning, in our code, we need to say that translate to Spanish or something. So I'm going to go to text, add that, say okay. So each language has a 2-alphabet code. So I'm saying over here that, okay, convert this to Spanish. Now, this sends out a request to this Yandex Translate service, which is an online service. So once the response comes in, we need to handle that. So we are going to now drag this Yandex Translate button .got translation. And this translation block is going to contain that translation. So what we are now going to do is, again, call my text-to-speech.speak, and I'm going to plug in that translation in here. So let's try this now. So I'm going to say hello there, and then click on this button.
Hello there. Hola.
So notice it first said hello there, and it's an hola. I had another sentence.
My MI is West of Georgia.
So I don't know whether you realize it or not. Let me play it again.
My MI is West of Georgia.
So what is happening is by the time it says, it finishes saying that English translation, the Spanish translation has already arrived for that service, and those two are overlapping. So we can do something where we can put in some weight before we speak this out. Or we can put in some weight before we request the translation. So either one will work. So the way to put in some weight is to add a clock. So the clock is in a sensor. So we are going to drag a clock. This is in milliseconds. So 1,000 milliseconds is a second. So maybe I will put in 5,000. So this clock will start firing all the time. So what we want to do is, this is a countdown timer. So we don't want it to start just like that. We want to start it when we want. We want to stop it when we want. So I'm going to have initially the timer set as disabled. So I unclicked it. So meaning it's not starting right now. But when I'm ready for the translation, instead of requesting the translation right away, I can start my timer. So this timer is going to do a countdown without us noticing it for 5 seconds, because that's what I have set it to. So I'm going to set the timer enabled to true now. And when that timer expires, which is a clock.timer event, that's when we are going to request this translation. And we're also going to disable the timer. So I duplicated that block, and this is becoming a pretty heavyweight code at this point. And we are going to set the timer enabled to false. In other words, we just stopped the timer. So let's now see what happens. So I'm going to type a message. Now I'm going to hit the button.
My home state is Georgia. Mi estado es de Georgia.
So as you heard, there was a gap between the English sentence and the Spanish sentence.
I love to visit New York City. Me encanta visitar la ciudad de Nueva York.
So, as you can see, it went from pretty straightforward to a pretty good app pretty fast. So your students, especially who are learning English or learning Spanish, they can use this to write something in English, hear that out, and then hear the translation delayed by 5 seconds. So that's all I had planned to talk about today. So I'm going to stop here. I know we covered a lot of things. I hope you're getting a feel for App Inventor. And we will continue to discuss other apps 2 weeks from now. So let me stop. I know we have a good bit of time left, so feel free to ask questions. I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes to see if you have questions or not. And then, if not, we will stop tonight. So I'm going to pause. Please ask any questions that you have. Evelyn says, can you show your design for a moment? Sure. So I'm guessing, so this is the designer. This is the whole designer. Oh, okay, hold on, designer. There we go. So yeah, I added a, first I started by adding out a button, and I changed the height property to 25%, meaning it's going to occupy the top quarter of the screen, I changed the width property to fill parent, and I changed the text property to talk to me. So that was the top button. And I was clicking that. It was just verbalizing whatever we asked it to say. So that was the first. Then we added a text to speech. So the text to speech is in media. So we dragged the text to speech. So then for when button 1.click was happening, in response, our app was passing this text message to this text to speech block, and the text to speech block was saying that out loud. Then we went and looked into the sensors, and we added the accelerometer sensor. So this is a non-visible component because we don't get to see it, we get to see its effect. We didn't change any properties at all. What we did was we clicked on the accelerometer sensor and dragged this shaking event. So when we were shaking the phone, in response, we were making the text-to-speech to speak, say another message. Then we added the text box. So this is where, so I went back to user interface, added a text box, changed a couple of properties. We made the height 10%. We made the width fill parent so that it spans the entire width of the screen. So then I have a question that I'm going to answer. Why did you add a clock and disabled it? So let me first take the clock out. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So what I did was I added a text box. In this text box, I'm typing something, and initially I just had I had just this. So when button 2 was being clicked, we were reading the text property, the current value of the text property, we were speaking that out loud. So now, after that, we wanted to not only say it, but we want to translate it to some language as well. So that's why we added the translation block. So we went to media. I added this Yandex Translate. This is a service similar to Google Translate. Yandex is another company which provides translation service that you can use in your app. Usually, these companies will give you free translation for basic apps, but if you have a successful app which is using their translation service, they're going to charge you some little bit of money for each time your app connects to their service to translate something. That's their business model. So this Yandex Translate, right now what we had was this. So we haven't done any translation yet. So let me show you the app again. So if I type something and then click the button,
Hello there.
it just says it out. Now, when I was translating, what I initially did was I said that, and then I requested, so I again took that same block of text, I requested a translation for that, and I said, okay, I want it translated to Spanish. Yes, España is the code for Spanish. So now, for short messages, this will work.
Hello there. Hola.
But if I have a longer message, by the time the English text-to-speech block executes, so all these blocks start executing at the same time, and by this time this is done, this also starts happening. So they kind of overlap, and you don't hear the English version before the Spanish version.
Hola, espero que estén teniendo una buena noche.
So it starts saying, hello there, hope you are, and before it can even start to say the word hope, this request for the Yandex translation comes in and this block starts executing. So that was the problem that we saw. So let me show it to you again. So I'm about to click speak the bottom button.
Help, bola espero que estén teniendo una buena noche.
So what's happening is, even before we even can speak the hello or
Stop
hello,
shaking me, that is not funny.
so even before we can say hello, the Spanish was happening. So what I did was I added clock. So by default, the clock, it starts counting down 1 second. And every second, the clock expires and the timer gets fired. I don't want that to happen by default. So what I did was I initially, so when I add something, these are the default properties. I don't want the default property to happen here. I want it stopped. Initially, I want the clock stopped, and I want it to count down for 5 seconds. So this is in milliseconds. So milliseconds means 1000 milliseconds is a second. So I'm setting the clock to 5 seconds. But I want it to start when I request this translation. So basically, I'm taking this block out. I'm starting, so when I click the button, that's when I'm starting the clock. So I'm going to go to clock. I'm going to look for the enabled property. And I'm going to set it to true, meaning when I clicked the button to, it started verbalizing the sentence that I had typed in English, and it started the clock of 5 seconds. So this is a countdown. And when that clock's timer expires, that's when this event is going to be called. So that's going to happen in 5 seconds. That's when we are requesting the translation, and we are stopping the clock by setting this true to false. So now when I have the same sentence, when I type something in, and then when I hit that button, it starts speaking it in English, and then it also starts a timer, and when this timer expires in 5 seconds, that's when it requests the translation.
This is a sample sentence. Esta es una oración de ejemplo.
So I hope that was a good question, Evelyn. Why? So Evelyn's question was, why did you add a clock and disabled it? So I hope this answered your question. If not, I'll again explain. So I enjoyed creating this app. This can go even with the starter ideas that we are learning. You can take this to your students and they will be amazed at what they can create in short period of time. And I think that's really important for school students to see a product that is appealing to them even when they don't know too much. With computer programming, some of the issues that we face in college is we start out with this professional level languages like Java and Python, and sometimes the students don't see a product that they can quickly create which is somewhat similar to what they use, and sometimes they get discouraged with that. Now, I mean, this is no different from, let's say, music. So when you start learning music, you're just learning, let's say you start learning piano. You're learning the basic keys and the notes. When you start learning guitar, you're learning the basic chords and things like that. You cannot play a whole song right away. But that idea that you have to work on it and learn the basics first, when you're just practicing that over and over again before you can play something substantial, that applies to programming, and for that matter, pretty much anything else. You have to learn the alphabets first before you can construct words, before you can construct sentences and paragraphs and essays. But in computer programming, our current trend is students want to see some tangible product. So App Inventor is great in that sense. So it's 9 o'clock. So if there is no other questions, we are going to stop here today. I'm going to wait for a minute to see if there are any other questions or not. If not, we will stop here. And I'll talk to you all again in 2 weeks. All right. Let's stop. Good night, everyone.